Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
As we roll back into the story now, and we see these people, we see that Israel got a whole lot of problems. Some of them might even deal with how they pray, their location. Now we're talking about Israel, right? Because last time we left off, what was the state of Israel? Bring me up to speed. Covert ops, right? We had some sneaking going on. We had what else? Nothing? All right, so let's just roll into where we're at then. I guess we don't remember. So going forward, it's going to probably sound a little different. Where are we at?
And worse than their forefathers did.
They was doing some crazy stuff. And who was leading this sinful revolution? What king? Jeroboam. There we go. And Jeroboam had a need. His son was dying. This need came about because Jeroboam made the people of Israel and himself very comfortable with bad practices and bad habits. Hey, guys of Israel, I'm scared of the king. It's kind of far to go over there, so maybe I'll just build these golden calves. We see that work into it. We see now, but we see the I want to say coming to a head, right? We see what has come to a head because of Jeroboam's actions, and he has led Israel into sin. Now this sin has come to where it's falling on his house. It has fell on his house, and now he has to do the one thing that he needs, and that's go to God, right? Now, we batted over a little bit. Does Jeroboam believe in God? Is he just simply trying to, get a favor from God? What is the problem here? Why didn't he go and request himself, right? Did anybody ask that? Yeah, we got it. We got into it, right? Why he didn't do it himself, we hashed that out. And then Jeroboam said, well, you know what, it'd be a great idea. Let me send my wife. And he sent her, and the prophet was sitting at the door, couldn't see. Now, last week, we found out that a blind man can see a whole lot when he's in tune with who? God. So even God, when he says, I give sight to the blind, you can, if somebody said, no, that's crazy, ain't no way he gives sight to the blind, you say, let me lick both of my thumbs real quick, flick some pages and say, there you go. If you need proof, it's right there. If you want to need proof in the Old Testament, kind of did the same thing. Put it on the eyes. So we know that he's been given sight to the blind in so many ways, even in the Old, right? So we see this. And this sight that was given to the blind was the sight of truth. Everything. Now we thought the sight was seeing a wife in her disguise. Well, no, she fooled everybody else in Jerusalem on the way up there. We knew what this sight was. This sight was the truth and what was going to befall Israel. Death to the son. Son dies. Kingdom was already promised to be destroyed. Those two cities and towns was going to be made rubble. And now we see. She steps back into the town into deceit. Son dies. They mourn. And then what? What happens to Jeroboam? He dies, right? So now we have a whole new king. Who is taking over Israel? Remember when I asked y'all early in the lessons, I said, I'm going to need a lot of help to see what side of the fence on, because these kings are going to be dropping and rising like flies. This one fought that one. Technically, they're not driving and rising like flies, but in the sense of a sentence, you'll see a king, it'll say he was 40 years and then he was up out of here because of his wickedness. But we're going to get some of the insight of what happened between them two. All right, so where do we have right now? Who? All right. So who is the king of Israel right now? Nadab, right? The son. Who is the king of Judah right now? Or Rehoboam, right? Okay, so let's remember. We didn't leave Rehoboam out last week. We talked about him too. What did Rehoboam do? Huh? He did evil too, but in the process, it was something like, remember we read in Chronicles? We went back to Chronicles and Rehoboam did something that made, he humbled himself before God. So now Rehoboam's story is kind of coming to an end. Rehoboam humbled himself before God. The tribal leaders was like, we got to change our heart because the way things are going, we kind of need to turn around and go back. So they humbled themselves. And after they humbled themselves, Judah was what? Was not, somebody might have said they was forgiven. No, 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 no. Not destroyed. Because what is a promise that has been promised to Solomon's sons? That he will what? It was a promise about that kingdom being what? Taken away. So it's still going to be taken away. And who is the person that's going to sit on the throne forever? Now, I know everybody who's read the New Testament will say Jesus. Of course, that we know the answer. Cheat code, flip to the back of the book. You know how I used to have, well, maybe I was the only kid that did that. In school, teacher would give you the book. The book had 50% of the answers. I literally would just turn in 50% of the answers minus the other ones. And they'd be like, we know you did only the answers in the back of the book. So a lot of times I'm asking the question, we know the answers in the back of the book. But right here, what do we see? We see a throne that doesn't have the person that's going to be sitting on it, because every one of these kings can what? All right, stay with me now, because it's important to watch the throne from the throne. That makes sense? All right. Well, I'll move fast if you haven't moved too slow for you. All right. So where are we now? We have talked about Jeroboam, Rehoboam, and both of their kingdoms have come to an end. We have a new king sitting on the throne, which is, and then we have another king that's getting ready to take over after him is, anybody know Study the North? Who? Oh, man, let's just get into it.
Something like Jeroboam, made out.
Huh? No, Jeroboam gone. We already got Jeroboam. Huh? That's the second king, right? Now, didn't we talk about the wars that was happening between these two? Because Abba, there it is. He's now the king. And the other kings are going to start fighting. We talked about this infighting that's happened between who? Who's doing all this infighting? If I was to ask simplicity, as a parent, brothers are fighting. This is not anything new in the scriptures. If we look at what the scriptures say, we are all one, right? Descendants of one. So we're all one. It means that all of these brothers, this is an internal conflict. Now, why am I pointing at an internal conflict? Anybody remember growing up, something was going on in your house? What your parents say? You better not what? You better not take that out of this house. Well, imagine the one thing that was created as a focal point for the entire world to watch. I mean, there was a temple of gold smack dab in the middle of one of the most beautiful cities. Imagine if two brothers were sitting there, because dad is, he's watching them, and they're fighting. Now, I'm telling you this from our side of the table as we see it in history and through the scripture. Two brothers are literally just going at it, and dad is watching them saying, both of them need a beating. Both of them need where is my switch? Because that's what my grandmama used to say on my grandpa. Where is my rod of chastising? I already got one lined up when I get home from work. I don't talk to mom already. When I come in, that one's getting that whooping. And you also have the second one. It's not as bad, but he's standing over there as he looks at his brothers and say, nah, 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 nah. Look at what you're doing. Dad's not as mad as us. Well, let's see how mad or what we have. Now, we also know that one brother was supposed to wash the dishes and clean the house, while the other brother was probably, let's say, clean a bathroom. Again, I'm just assigning these as metaphors for thought. One brother didn't do anything he was doing, and the other brother did. He just didn't get it beaten. It just got postponed in understanding. All right? So I believe it was on 14 what? 14:21. Now, meanwhile, Rehoboam, son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 40 years old when he became the king, and reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, which was the city of the Lord. The Lord had chosen out of all of the tribes of Israel to put his name there, and his mother, Naham, the Amorite. All right, we see some differences, right? The mother, the Amorite, we know that. We know that David, we know that it's other nations now in here. So the Amorites, are they off in family? Who are the Amorites? They're all related. But who are the Amorites? All right, go back to all of them, that long list of kings and chronicles. Who are Amorites? Aren't they descendants of somebody? Don't focus on too much. Questions like this will come out because it should, because these are things we have read. And a lot of stuff we're going to forget. But I throw the question out there to say, that's something I can jog my memory about because I read it in the scriptures. I know it. I just don't remember it. So as I'm in my studies and my stuff and my time, I'm looking over it. If a tribe comes up and it kind of just curious, like we're naming this woman from this tribe, it might want to remind me about the tribe, go back and look at a little history of them, and then think about this person being in this particular role in the kingdom. You see you get where I'm going here? Just very small importance, but just knowing a little bit of story. And Judah, sorry, it's a Y in my book. And Judah did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and they provoked him to jealousy and with their sins which they committed. And we read about those in the Chronicles, right? So we're actually a little bit ahead of this. So we're gonna go here. You asking or you telling? It's Moabite. It's two of them. Moabites and Amorites. Moabites and Amorites. There you go. Follow that lineage, girl. Hey, I wish I had a gold star to like. But her confidence is what was really in it, and I appreciate that. You knew it. All right. So and Judah did evil in the eye. So we talked about Judah's evil, but did we ever say what that evil was? Right here, just say Judah did evil in the eyes and provoked your jealousy, as they committed more than all of their fathers had done. Wow, how did you do more than what they did in the past? Because you have more knowledge. You get when you see this sentence, they did more wickedly than their fathers did. A lot of times people will say, wow, did they increase the wickedness? No, they had the knowledge and still continued to do the wicked things that their fathers did. Because their fathers they're not recreating idolatry. They're just doing it with the knowledge that they shouldn't. Right. A lot of the ones where we see, and this gets big as we get later on and we start talking about the Gentile nation or the Gentiles, because Gentiles just mean nations. We start talking about the other nations that are on the other side, right? You'll hear things like they kept law even though they did not know it. But these people who knew law didn't keep it. So therefore, they did worse than their fathers because what they knew they did not do, and they just increased on top of what they already knew. You see, not only that, they've seen the pattern of what their fathers did, seen what happened, the punishment, and still willingly did it themselves. Again, worse, even though we don't see new idolatry, right? We do see the golden calves as being built new, but what did he tell Rehoboam when he built them? He tried to associate the golden calves with the same thing that they did in the desert, right? Still the same crime, same sin. He just knew he was wrong. And God actually addressed that, right? Go ahead.
In the case of Solomon, when he had all the wives and the concubines, he allowed them to bring their gods. In the case of Rehoboam, did he actually build shrines? Did Solomon build them too, or he just allowed it?
What's the question again?
Okay, in the case of Rehoboam, the son of
Solomon.
Okay.
All right.
Right. Was Solomon allowed the concubines to bring their gods, put them on the wall? Would it be a difference to say that Rehoboam built on that in the sense that he built shrines instead of just letting them do it and then said worship them?
Solomon built stuff too.
He did?
He did. Remember it said he built everything for his 700 wives. He made them all really comfortable in their land. Solomon did. So again, these aren't upgrades to like they're creating something new. What it is, they're creating the same thing with better knowledge. Worse than their fathers. Because think about where we are. Now I'm going to flip a little bit further to the end of the book. Where we are. What we know about Christ. To go back into law and live according would be foolish. So increasing, when we look at what we are doing, they would say, You guys are far more foolish than them. Even though they had salvation in their way back then, we have a full understanding of what they don't, and we be foolish to do it. In fact, we would act worse than our fathers did in the past.
When he has said it'll be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah than it will for those people, because Sodom and Gomorrah didn't have.
They didn't have a lot.
They had.
They didn't have a lot. Sodom and Gomorrah didn't. When we think about Sodom and Gomorrah, and wow, I didn't really want to get into this. When we think about Sodom and Gomorrah, right? What did Abraham say he was looking down on the city? He said, "Hey, if you give me what was his first number? It was large, right? He already got 50. He got down to how many? Like 1? 10, right? And I said, all right, 10. But this is the thing. In him asking for 10 people, what was Sodom's understanding? That tomorrow was going to come. You get what I'm saying? If Sodom would have known, now you kind of make me about to hop into some of the prophets as they talk about Jerusalem, but we'll leave because they actually compare Jerusalem to Sodom. They say, Jerusalem, you did way worse than if Sodom, your big, long story, we'll get into it later on in the lesson. But stick with me here. This is the knowledge. Israel and this current state are the knowledge for God in the world. Everything they do heaps more coal on the fire because they are the only ones in the world this time that knows God. Not know him in the sense of, hey, he's far off. He's in the middle of their city. You see, it's not like any other nation. They have Dagon, but this one right here resides in us, and he's with us, and he's evident. It's been proven. Everybody around here know it, but yet I still want to build another temple. He brought me through the conquest and done everything else, yet I still want to go and do all the different things. This is the law working itself out, showing that it is a teacher. It is teaching the people. It's teaching us, because we learn from who? We learn from our Father, right? I'll take both answers. We learn from the scriptures and our Father. Well, we see Christ in the gospel. We see the Father here. So we are learning the discipline of the Father. And if you can see the discipline of the Father, you can see that these two brothers are now in a conflict, and the Father is saying it is time to get a switch. Now, we know that there are going to be some good and bad days. I used to love my Aunt Phyllis was saying that song. I've had, what is it? I won't complain. One of the best parts, I had my good days, had my bad days, but I won't complain. But we'll see sometimes that Israel will go through those. Judah and Jerusalem will go through those days where it will not be complaints. In fact, I think somewhere later on down in the scriptures, as we might get to our reading, where it actually says that they had a long period of rest, peace. Nobody was coming to bother them. Everything was good. But at the same time, what was the state of Israel? Were they at rest? Can you imagine, you sitting in a house watching your brothers, not brother, brothers, 12, the other 10 tribes that went off on over there, taking a whooping. Anybody ever been in line for one? I have. Stood there and watched. Thought negotiation was going to work. Thought, hey, coming to terms with it. Man, maybe if I just let her whoop me. Go ahead, you ain't ready to start now? Okay, it ain't my turn. Ooh, that look bad. Yeah. Hey, look, sometimes. And I had a Southern mother, and I love her. And I tell anybody, man, I love my mom. If me and my friends did something and they were standing in my house, my friend would be standing there, and I'd be like, yep, I'm going to go ahead and get mine out the way. He'd be like, what you talking about? Don't worry about it. Because the whooping was coming for him too. Because discipline was needed. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but so now we are Israel. We're standing here. We're watching our kings do good or bad. As we sit here, we're going to figure this out and see where we stand. We can even say, hey, this is what I would have did, because this is some of the freedom of seeing the scriptures and having our opinion. But at the end of the day, it's good to have an opinion, but the word is going to be what stand and what we learn from. So let's dig in, or as we was digging in. All right, so Judah did evil in the eyes. Now, if you notice, they're saying Judah. They're not picking one person. Judah as a whole, meaning king and people. Judah did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins which they committed, more than all their fathers had done. For they also built themselves high places and pillars and ash streams on every high hill until under every green tree. And there was also cult prostitutes in the land. And they did according to all the abominations, of the nations, which the Lord disposed before the children of Israel. Remember them people they were supposed to run out of land? They're going to talk about how some was left in there. And it came to me in the 5th year of the king Rehoboam and Shishak, king of Egypt. Man, king of Egypt. I remember Solomon having a mother-in-law. So if Rehoboam is the king and his dad, now we're in Judah, right? And Rehoboam's dad was Solomon. And Solomon's first wife was from where? And so Rehoboam is now getting ready to deal with his uncle. His uncle. This is, when we look at what's going on, do you see the heavy heart of the Lord? Like, do you see it? Man. I know Cush is over there in Egypt and all of the brothers and everything going on. They still your people. Remember, Ham. That's the progenitor of every vine that comes from there. Why are you hurt? Why? Okay. All right, y'all think y'all got it. But because of Judah's wickedness, this was the switch. Remember, they did wicked, built on the poles. So now we see the switch. The switch is coming from in the house. It's being swung by his own kin. Somebody he probably was close to. I mean, it's only a couple steps in relationships from around here, right?
Now, prostitutes, it wasn't just prostitutes in the land hanging out. This was a part of their cultic worship, and getting involved in this kind of acts. It's just one of the smallest.
I wasn't, but since you brought it up, thank you. Way to help me out. Huh? There it is. All right. So, cult prostitution. Let me see if I can pull up on my notes here. I have cult prostitution in my notes because it was something that I kind of figured. All right, cult prostitution, also known as sacred prostitution or temple prostitution. Now let me tell you something. Y'all remember back in the day, because everybody's gonna say cult prostitution is crazy. Do you remember a certain Hebrew boy? One day he was out and he was just like, boop, 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 boop. I'm going up here and I'm going, get ready to go. Harvest time. Got to stop over here by the cult prostitute. And he laid with her. And then he went on his way. And then she came and everybody found her in a certain way. And they was like, ha, that's your child. And he was like, you have found, this woman is more honest than me. You get where I'm going here? So this is a culture where during the harvest, they would have women out. And a lot of the men, even the Hebrew boys, would stop. Now, this doesn't mean that it's welcomed into the land. What I'm trying to tell you is this isn't something new. This is just now the equivalent of letting your weeds in the garden grow beyond recognition of your garden. You get where I'm going with here? So cult prostitution isn't new, because that Hebrew boy was the same tribe right now that's being chastised. Anybody remember that story? That was about Judah. Remember, both of his sons died, and he was like, don't do that again. And then she went and she was outside the door of the cult prostitutes. So these stories, let me finish, refers to the practice of engaging in sexual acts as part of a religious ritual or worship. These practices was prevalent in various areas near Eastern cultures, include the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, and the Greeks. Key aspects of this. Associated with the fertility god, cult prostitute was often linked to the worship of fertility deities, such as Yasharoth. Ain't that one of the poles that's sitting up under the tree? All right, now we see why it's all playing in. Such as the Asheroth, Baal, and Aphrodite. If you look on that that scale, that mapping right there of history, you'll notice it. Rome is very, very tiny, but that does not mean their ideas are very, very tiny. Their ideas spread when they spread. Got what I'm saying? The Greeks are the same way, but the Greeks probably a little bit bigger than Rome, which means the ideas and an understanding of Aphrodite's is probably around the land. All right, so I'm just giving you some key here. All right, so where was that? Sexual acts were believed to invoke divine favor, ensure fertility, and promote or agricultural prosperity. Ritual practice. These practices were typically involved in paid intercourse, which could take place with within the temple premises or designated areas. The payment was often seen as a form of worship or sacrifice to the deities. Male and female practitioners, both men and women, served as cult prostitute. In the Bible, there is a term, kodesh, meaning male, and kidesha, meaning female, are used to describe these individuals. There you have cult prostitute. Now, here's some biblical perspective on it. I know I didn't want to get into too much of cult. Oh, it's right here. I don't have far to look for, but please.
So because, we'll see Asherah and the fertility god, we just read to keep going. That's some in-depth study. All these different shrines they had, they meant something, and they didn't ignore them. Like a lot of times we just read through it and keep going. So that's how I just go. I didn't mean you to land.
No, I had it here. I just wanted to see if anybody was going to ask for it. I have a lot of notes that's going to come afterwards, but this one was one of the ones going to come afterwards, but here you go. All right, so condemnation. Biblical condemnation. The Bible explicitly condemns cult prostitution, viewing it as a form of idolatry and spiritual adultery. These practices are seen as a direct violation of God's commandment and corruption of true worship, spiritual significance. The Bible condemns cult prostitution underscores the importance of maintaining purity and fidelity in worship and emphasize the need for God's people to remain separate from the pagan practices and uphold moral standards. I already said where's Mesbrin. It's debated among scholars. All right, so all the other stuff right there was just a lot of the historical content. But as we see, this is what's in the land. All right, so now that the picture is painted, these temples, or the temple, that's sitting in the middle of the city, which if we read on, we're gonna see that some of the beauty of it is getting ready to be taken away. So now we have the beauty of the temples that's being taken away. We have all types of acts going on in Judah. It was already going on in Israel. Israel got a far worse, I mean, I ain't gonna say worse problem, but the problem is similar. They built their own gods. These guys imported the gods of the Canaanites. You see, same crime, just a different way to see it. Remember what I told y'all earlier, and I said it before in the story, rejection doesn't look like what people think. So we see both houses, or basically the entirety of Israel has started to go astray. All right. And they did according to all the abominations which the Lord disposed of them before the children of Israel. And it came to be in the 5th year of the king Rehoboam that Shishak, the king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem, and he took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and even took away all. And he took away all shields of gold which Solomon had made. Now remember, these shields of gold was where? Temple courtyards, right? Shields of gold. So now this person, Shishak, is now not only taking things, he was taking things that we know was given to who? Given to God. All right. So we see what's happening to Israel. We see what happened to Jerusalem. There was Solomon and the king of Rehoboam made shields of bronze to replace them. So we have a downgraded look of the temple, which was not meant to be done. But this is where we are now, because of the wickedness of both kingdoms. Beat them into the hands with the chiefs of the guards who guarded the entrance of the king's house during the siege. And it came to be, whenever the king went into the house of the Lord, the guards would bring them in and take them out, meaning they now as the king goes in and come out, they're protecting the stuff that goes with them. And the rest of the acts of Rehoboam and all he did, are they not written in the books or the annals, which remember it says chronicles in some, but it's not the chronicles that we have at the back of the Bible. These would have been the records that would have been kept by the kings that they no longer have anymore due to the conquest and destruction of these kingdoms. I hope one day we find some one of the annals. And there was fighting between Rehoboam all the days. So Rehoboam slept with his fathers and was buried with his father in the city of David. And the name of his mother was Nahama. That's a lot of A's. Naamah, the Amorite, and Abijam, because I got a Y and all y'all J's, I got a Y. So y'all forgive me for trying to say it. If y'all knew how hard it was to get so, that's why it says Abijam, but Abijah. All right, this is how they would have said it then, because this is a W in David, which makes it Dawid. But okay, we'll just pass that. There's a lot of letters that didn't exist. All right, but for the sake of, because I'm trying to phrase this right. It said, I think yours say Lord his God, right? Because when I got different letters here twice, I want to make sure I'm saying it right. It says, for the sake, wherefore, 15:4. Oh, nope, I went too far. No. I got way down there. All right, so we done. We're done. So Rehoboam slept with his fathers. I said that. And he was buried with his fathers. We talked to his mom, and that's when I got stuck on Abijam. And his son reigned. So now, we now have two different kings. We have two different conflicts because now we have two different people reigning. So what was done with the old kings is done. Let's see what the new kings, how they treat each other. All right, or we can go back a little bit. Let's make sure I got this right. And those who read Chronicles, right? If you would have read Chronicles 12, you would have heard everything that Rehoboam did. That was what they transcribed over it. Is there anything for those who read 11, 10 and 11? It's different from what we just read here. Not saying a different story, additions to of Chronicles, 2 Chronicles 11. Any additions to it? If you can think of them, if you have read them, if not, go back and read them. I think last week I said the same thing. Go back and read them because we're going to read Chronicles 14. Right? And Abiah, oh, no, it went too far. Hold on. Because who's the king right now? Abiah, right? And the 8th, Abijam. Oof, told y'all. Here we go. So we talked about in Chronicles 13, not going to rehash it, restart it, but we talked about in Chronicles 13, Abiah or Abijah. No, y'all stay where y'all at. Y'all just stay there. I'm putting the story together. If you make the notes when you want to read later, it'll be easier. Trying to jump back and forth with all these pages, we lose our mind. All right. So in the last, in 13, when we read it in its entirety, or I think we read its entirety, we talked about Abijah fighting Jeroboam. All right. So we know that these two lives cross. Rehoboam was not the king, but Jeroboam was. Abijah was fighting Rehoboam. You see that now? Just putting the kingdoms in order. All right. Talked about the fighting. It talks about the children of Israel humbling themselves, and then Judah prevailed over the other kingdom of Israel. And then Israel, after that, Jeroboam goes in, his son takes over, and he kind of stays in one place. He's like, oh, we got waxed. God's not on our side, but they're still in Israel. All right, so let's proceed. Power, Jeroboam, and the rest acts of Abijah, and we got all that. That's not a lot. All right, so I don't want to kill them off too quick. Let's make sure I'm following here. All right, in 18 years, Sovereign Jeroboam of Nebat and Abijah became the king over Judah. He reigned 3 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the granddaughter of Absalom. And he walked in all the sins of his fathers, which he had done before, and his heart was not perfect to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. Now, when we talk about both sides, you may hear his father David and servant of David. or you may just hear him talk about the thrones, because remember, who is over the thrones of Israel right now? Is it a line of David or is it a servant of David? Servant. Servant, right? And a servant is not the one that's going to sit on the eternal throne. So we know that even though we hear things about the servant kingdom, I want you to, because sometimes it might just say the son of David, or it might be talking about the servant. A lot of times when they were talked, they just talked about as a whole, or they referenced the king as what his role was to the Lord. See what I'm saying? All right. So he reigned here in Jerusalem, his mother, the granddaughter Absalom, and he walked in the sins of his father, didn't carry the heart of David. But for David's sake, now again, we see God doing this for whose sake? David's sake. For David's sake. Not the people, but for David's sake. His God gave up for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem to raise up his son after him and establish Jerusalem. And David did what was right in the eye. Hold on, did I go too far back? No, I'm right in the right place. And David did, why did I say David? They're describing what David did and the reason why this lamp is still burning in Jerusalem. He hasn't been totally wiped out. Because remember, they've done the evil that their fathers did, but this was a promise to David. And it's talking about how he did right in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn aside from all that he commanded him all the days of his life. And then the writer said, well, except that one time with Uriah, just like that. And he said, and that was it. That is how they describe David. One flaw. Now, if we had David, and David in the eyes of the Lord only had one flaw, what did the greater David have? Well, how do you beat one flaw? By having zero. So we see why Jesus is the greatest David. I love to point out little things like that because it's like, hey, that's pretty cool. David had one. Uriah. Jesus had none. So we see that as we tell the story of David, David is still counted righteous. Even with this blot, we could read all of this a million times. And the whole thing is, even though at the end it talks about Uriah, the beginning is what matters. David was righteous in the eyes of the Lord. Except for that one thing that he did with Uriah. And that's how it's put out there. So again, David's righteousness is what's keeping Jerusalem's lamp on, keeping someone on the throne. And they were fighting between Rehoboam and Jeroboam in the days of his life. And the rest of Abijah and all he did, are they not written in the book of annals of the kings of Judah? And they were fighting between Abijah and Jeroboam, which was in 13, what we read. I didn't want, and the reason why I'm reading it like this, because if you read it like this and then you go over to the Chronicles, you'll say, wow, they was fighting. Like this line, not saying that the Bible isn't true, but don't you want to see what was going on? Like, how were they fighting? Like, what were some of the things that were going on while they fighting? So Chronicles fill in a lot of those spots. So Abijah and Jeroboam and Abijah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David. So now there is another king from which kingdom that died? Judah. So Judah's throne is now gone, right? No, not gone. So who's next on the throne? So Asa. So, all right, so Abishai slept. Now I'm in Chronicles 14, and I'm probably going to close out with this night. And Abishai slept with his fathers, because right now, right after, and if you stand with kings, right, they're closing out, and the next thing is say Abishai slept with his fathers, should be 15:8, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa son ruled in his place, right? So if you was to put in your Bible in a note, whatever you want, say pin here. If you want to know what's getting ready to happen in a little bit more detail, but a kinder writing, go to the Chronicles. Go to Chronicles 14:2, to be exact, and read on. And this is what Asa did, what was good and what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Now, when y'all go read this for your further study in Kings, it's probably going to sound a lot. It's going to be similar stuff. It was right in the eyes of the Lord his God. And he removed the sacrifices of strange gods and in the high places. He broke down the pillars and cut down the Asherim, and commanded Judah to seek the Lord God of their fathers, and to do the law and the commands. And he removed the high places and the sun pillars from the city of Judah, and he reigned and rested and rested under them. So all these places that he removed, he create reigns and rest, right? That's what he said. And he built cities in defense of Judah, since the land had rest and it had no fighting in those years, because the Lord had given him rest. And he said to Judah, let us build the cities and make walls around them, and tower gates and bars, and while the land is yet before us, because we have sought the Lord our God, we have sought, and he has given us rest all around. So they built and prospered. And Asha had an army of 300,000 men from Judah, bearing shields and spears, from Benjamin 200,000, and 80,000 men bearing shields and drew bows. All of them were mighty and brave. Now, it's a time of peace, but he seemed like he's gearing up for war, right? Let us build up walls. Let us build up strong defense. Even though we're in a time of peace, let us sharpen spears and beat plowshares into swords. Seems like that's what's going on, right? But land is having rest. But if the land is having rest, he's gearing up for something. Why is he gearing up for this? Like, that made me ask a question. What was he gearing up for? What was coming? Well, what was known to be coming? History from the other side would tell you that as Jerusalem and Israel was having their internal conflict, there were other nations. There were also internal conflict, and eventually one of those conflicts between Assyria and I think it was the Syrians and something else, and eventually it just became the Assyrians. That literally, go look over history. It was other people was fighting too, and then eventually they just said, "Well, you whooped me up pretty good." You know, and Assyria was known for this: beating you, breeding you out, shipping your men out of the lands, and then using them as part of the army and the forces. Right. So we see Assyria has, in this time frame, and you go look around history, Assyria is now Assyria. It's no longer two warring little tribes. It's literally bonded up, and they're just sitting over there. All right. So a lot of these things that we see with the knowledge that we have, we know that this preparation during peacetime that is being mentioned, we know that war is coming, either internal war between brothers or external war from the people outside. But whatever way we look at it, we know that Israel and Judah is definitely in peril. All right. By us knowing things forward, we can see this. All right. And Zerah the Cushite came against the army of with 1,000,000 men and 300 chariots, and he came to Marishah. So yeah, them plowshares was getting beat, right? Because the Cushites, they would have been close to what land? I know it's been a long time when we talked about the genealogy, but Cush and Mizraim are whose sons? Y'all can cheat. It's over there on the board if you want to sneak a look. Somebody sneak a look and give somebody an answer. Don't worry about it. Before you even sneak a look, I'll tell you. They was Ham's sons, right? Ham had Cush and Mizraim. So far, the big brother has already came to the house, Mizraim, also known as Egypt. And now the little brother, mine, he's like, yeah, I got some men too. I want to come to the house, the Cushites. You see how it's working here? You see what's happening to the kingdom of Israel? They're getting attention, all right. People are being drawn to them, just like God said. But instead of being drawn as a beacon of hope for the world, in a place where God will be seen by all, it's turned into a desolate land for war. All right. Cushites came up against them with an army of 1,000,000 men and 300 chariots. And Asha went out against them, and they set battle in array in the valley of Rephathah. I tried it. At Marishah. And Asha called to the Lord his God and said, Lord, there is no one but you to help between the mighty and the powerless. He acknowledged himself being outnumbered, even though he had weapon, shield, and was planning for defense during the time of war. he understood that the might did not come from him. Help us, O Lord, our God, for we rest on you, and in your name we go against this crowd. That sounds like a prayer, right? It definitely was. He was calling out. O Lord, you are our God. Do not let man prevail against who? Did he say us?
You.
Do not let man prevail against you. So the Lord smote the Cushites before Ashai and Judah, and the Cushites fled. And Ashai and the people who were with him pursued him to Gera, and the Cushites fell until there were none alive for them. How many did they bring? A million and some, right? How many are left? Did it say it was after this? None. All right. For they were broken before the Lord and his army, and they took very much spoils and struck all the cities of Gera. For the fear of the Lord came upon them, and they plundered all the city, for there was exceedingly much in the spoils. And they also struck the camps of the herdsmen and captured many sheep and camel. And to let you know, sheep and camel was like currency. So if they took all of these people, sheep and camel, I mean, pretty much they were crippling their, let's say, economy, their land, their whatever they would give out from these animals, whether it was the fur, the milk, whatever, it was gone. So this is you see that they crippled the Cushites. All right, we'll put a pin in it right there. We'll tell this story from the other side next time we come. Probably more abridged than anything. I still got 5 minutes, and you said I got 5 on the back end. So I'm gonna take my 5 on the back end. Where we at in 15? All right, 15:9. So let's see how these stories line up. And the 20 years of Jeroboam, son of Israel, Ashai became the king over Jerusalem, and he reigned for 41 years in Jerusalem, and his grandmother's name was Maacah, the granddaughter of Absalom. I know a little repetitive there, but it's when they were writing this text, they was really let you know where the lineage stood so we could see where we were, how it involved, all the things. They didn't leave anything out. And he reigned for 41 years in Jerusalem. Maybe I'm keep reading the same line. And Ashai did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, right? So the chronicler and the kings are lining up. We know that they did right in the eyes of the Lord, as his father David had done, and he put away the cult prostitutes. Well, did they mention he put away the cult prostitutes in the Chronicles? They talked about the war, right? They said he put away. So right now the Chronicles are lining up. Very specific, some more get into detail than us. So he put away the cult prostitutes from the land and remove all the idols of his fathers. I'm saying in the Chronicles, did they mention cult prostitutes? Right. They say he just put away all the idols in the land. But here we're seeing that he's actually going down. We know all the idols in the land, but we're seeing his works. Cult prostitutes, out of there. All right, and prostitutes from the land and all the idols that his fathers had made. Ooh, he was cleaning up the house. As that. He also removed Maacah, his grandmother, from the king, because this says sovereignist mother. I'm just trying to get my words right. Yeah, she out of there. She out of there. He clean the house. Anything that is not of God, he actually gets to the point, I believe it says, and anyone that did not serve the Lord, he put him to death. So right now he is cleaning house. He's a young kid. I think he was like maybe in his 20s. What are y'all, his 40s? I remember this, 41. He's young for a king. Not young as Solomon. Remember, a king usually kept kingship until he was old, diseased, and it was like, all right, well, this guy's going crazy. And the throne was probably just taken. But in this case, he's a young king, still, watching everything in the land, seeing the war, seeing it, and now he's reigning. And when he got in there, he said, I don't like anyone. Now he's 40. So as being 40 and not being the king immediately, that gave him 40 years of what? Watching. You see what I'm saying? I watched this nation. Now I'm not now people say, why didn't he go and overtake? Because he's such a righteous king. Why did he stand for all this wickedness in the land? Because it was God's plan. It was not his time. And also for the one thing that we hear echoed in the righteousness who I'm not going to say pursue the throne, but know that it's coming in a direction. They who are righteous do not strike who the Lord anointed. Even if they are sitting in the throne and they're acting corrupted, unless the Lord sends them to. So it would have been unjust for him to take the throne, because then we would have said, the story would have said, the wicked King Ashai did wicked to take the throne, even though he did righteous. So we would have always been looking at the wicked that he did first. You know what I'm saying? That's why we don't see him doing any uprises during all this time, even though the land was wicked. But when he got his chance to do right, he just didn't do right. He did right to where the Lord said, I'm pleased with them. I'm pleased with this one. He did what he was supposed to do. That man went up against his mother. That's a hard thing to do. You imagine that conversation. Now we can close our books. We'll end it right there. That man went up against his mom. Hey, mom. Yeah, I've been tearing down all the Asherim poles and everything else. Oh, yeah, that's cool. That's good, son, man. You're doing such a great job in Jerusalem. And all the people are going back to Yahweh. They praising like they used to. Yeah, mom, they sure are. Yeah. You know that temple you got? Yeah, son. That one right there. Yeah, we tearing that down. No, hey, you might want to do it, because after this week, anybody who's not doing it will be put to death. Now, that is old law, right? You know, it's an old law. But if you think about it, man, put to death if you don't worship. That's harsh in the land. Because guess who up on the other side still doing their own business? Jerusalem. Got their little golden calf, and they're going to double down. Y'all tearing y'all temples down? We ordering for new construction. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it. Thank y'all for listening. Questions?